Suyu traveled through the space with spiritual power and coincidentally encountered a family plagiarism exile. Without saying a word, Suyu rolled up her sleeves to collect the treasure. Copying home. The Crown Prince also copied it. Even corrupt officials copy. Ha! Why is Li Wang so poor? Let's also take it away. Accidentally copied into a wealthy woman. Keywords of the novel. Before Exile, I was already wealthy and had no pop-ups. Before Exile, I was already wealthy and had no pop-ups. Download the complete text. Before Exile, I was already wealthy and had no pop-ups. Read the latest chapters. Chapter 1. Thunderbolt from the Sky. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Thunderbolt from the Sky, the capital city of Shifan Kingdom and the residence of Anding Marquis. At this moment, the hall of the mansion was filled with mournful cries. Oh my God, what have we done in the Marquis's mansion? Madame Anding cried loudly as she looked up to the sky. Overnight, the stable Marquis's mansion fell from a high-ranking official to a soon-to-be exiled criminal. This news was like a bolt from the blue, exploding the entire Marquis's mansion. No one can accept this fact. The eldest lady held the old lady in tears, and the handkerchief was almost wriggling out of the water. Mom, please don't do this. Crying has ruined your body. Wait, on the road, on the road. Madame Su couldn't continue speaking and began to whimper again. Crying has ruined my body, how can I endure the long and arduous journey of exile? Woo-woo. Mom, what should I do? How are Dad, Grandpa, and Second Grandpa doing now? Second Lady Wu pulled the old man who had not yet stopped speaking and asked. At this moment, she was completely disoriented and worried about the men in her family, as well as the days of exile in the future. How could these pampered ladies, young masters withstand the unbearable life of being exiled in the wind, food, and shelter? Isn't this taking human life? Second Lady cried uncontrollably. Shut up, don't even howl anymore. There's no one dead, why howl? The commander of the Imperial Guard, who was standing guard in the yard, was getting a headache from crying. He shouted loudly, these women are really annoying. They only know how to cry, they are going to be exiled, and they don't know how to prepare something. The emperor issued an order to plagiarize the family, but did not say that the prisoners were not allowed to bring anything for food and clothing. I really want to drink from the west and north on the road. The female relatives in the lobby were shouted at and immediately stopped, only sobbing softly. At this moment, Suyu was busy in the backyard of Anding Marquis's mansion. When she was certain whether she had traveled through time or was facing a major crisis, she tirelessly collected the things from the Duke of Anding's mansion. She is Suyu, who died in the end of the world. Since her birth, she has had a spiritual space that exists in her divine soul. This space expands with the strength of her spiritual power. When she died, she could use her spiritual power to retrieve things from the air. Wearing this, also known as Suyu, it blends her spiritual power and has now recovered to 2/3 of the spiritual power at the time of her death. It can also be retrieved from the air. At this moment, she had already collected the items from the warehouse of the Marquis's mansion, and there was not a single strand of hair left in the empty warehouse. Suyu pursed her lips and asked the dog emperor to come and copy the house, making him feel lonely. The Anding Marquis's mansion did not engage in any heinous or usurping power, and ended up with a family theft and exile. Suyu can only say that the Duke of Anding's mansion is unlucky and implicated by her fiancé A.E., the fourth prince. The Crown Prince, in order to suppress his brothers and make them lack the ability to compete for the Crown Prince's position, tried every means possible to kill, maim, and exile his brothers. The fourth prince is the most inconspicuous among all the princes, and the Crown Prince will not let him go. The fourth prince was demoted to a commoner and exiled to a land of hardship. He could not leave without being summoned. He was still the least punished among the princes, at least not disabled or dead, and saved his life. As the fiancée of the fourth prince, the Anding Marquis' mansion was implicated and also removed. The Anding Marquis' mansion is an old aristocratic family, whose ancestors fought alongside the founding emperor and achieved great success through hard work, which lasted for 3 generations. However, their influence in the court is not small and should not be underestimated. The Anding Marquis' mansion knew that the high achievements were mainly feared by the emperor's elders, and had always acted in a low-key manner. It was considered a royalist party and did not participate in the struggle to seize the throne. Even so, the crown prince cannot tolerate the influence that cannot be used by him. The purpose of first granting marriage to the Prince of Anding and the fourth prince is to bring the fourth prince and the Prince of Anding together. The crown prince's methods can be described as brilliant. He not only solved the problem of stabilizing the Marquis' mansion, but also removed the thorn in the flesh from the emperor's side. Which emperor allowed power to surpass imperial power? So the old Marquis and his 2 working sons were demoted to commoners, and the entire Anding Marquis family was exiled with the fourth prince. After hearing this bad news, the original owner didn't come up in a breath, and Xiaoxiangyu died. Now the core has been replaced by Suyu from the end of the world. The road of exile is long and arduous. Even in the end of the world, Suyu would not mistreat herself. With such a space, she wouldn't even empty the Marquis' mansion. The whole mansion has gone through several generations and has a rich heritage. The emperor may also be concerned about the gold and silver treasures of the Marquis' mansion when he steals his family. The Marquis' mansion is really rich. When it comes to collecting it, even Suyu couldn't take her eyes off the shiny gold. Suyu quickly collected the things in the warehouse, as well as the food, pots, bowls, and even firewood from the kitchen. Collecting is cleaner than a big cleaning. After collecting the kitchen, it was also the private storage in each house, and Suyu moved everything empty. From tables, chairs, benches, beds, bedding, to every stitch and thread, Suyu never let go. These things will all be of great use in the future. The Marquis' mansion has received it, and the next culprit is the Crown Prince's mansion. Dare to dismount from the Marquis of Anding's mansion, Suyu will not make the Crown Prince feel better. In the future, they will all be commoners in the harsh and cold land, regardless of whether they are beaten to death by oxen or horses, and the country will perish. The Crown Prince's mansion is not far from the Anding Marquis' mansion, and Suyu's spiritual power can cover the entire capital. The small Crown Prince's mansion is no problem. Suyu instructed the maid Saixia to guard the door, and she immediately released her spiritual strength and headed towards the Crown Prince's mansion. The people in the Crown Prince's mansion were all in high spirits, bustling with people. Suyu was in a hurry and didn't have time to find fault, so she went straight to the Crown Prince's warehouse. What a big warehouse, at least 1,000 square meters, truly worthy of being the Crown Prince. Suyu was so rich that she didn't have much to look at. With her spiritual power covering her, the gold and silver jewelry, antique calligraphy and painting, cloth and clothing, leather and fur ornaments, land deeds, various medicinal herbs, and other miscellaneous items in the warehouse disappeared completely in an instant. As soon as the warehouse was collected, all the private warehouses remained the same, and the places where Suyu passed through were like locusts passing through. Suyu left the Crown Prince's mansion with satisfaction, followed by the fourth prince's mansion. No, it should be the Prince Li's mansion. As early as the fourth Prince Morongli reached adulthood, he was granted the title of prince, and now he is the Prince Li. He was demoted and, like the prince's mansion, his family would be raided. How could he possibly benefit that old emperor? That dog emperor is not a thing, they are all their own sons. If the Crown Prince excludes dissidents but doesn't care, then don't blame her. Who doesn't know that she loves to fight against injustice the most, and hates evil like hatred? The warehouse near the prince's mansion looked shabby, and Suyu couldn't bear to look directly at it, but she still accepted it. Suyu, the warehouse of several other princes, showed mercy and gave them the capital to fight against the Crown Prince. She went to the palace, and she didn't hesitate to pay for the things of the dog emperor, including the wealth of his women. The emperor is the emperor, he is extremely wealthy, and the few houses he paid for before were less than 1/3 of that of the dog emperor. Looking at the gold and silver treasures in the space, Suyu was lost in 5 or 3 ways. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Empty Shell. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Empty Shell. Suyue couldn't control her emotions. Mommy, she will be the richest person in this world from now on. After finally calming down, the corrupt officials in the capital came next. Suyue curls her lips. Are you ready to give away the treasures? The arch-nemesis of the Duke of Anding's mansion, the Duke of Romgua's mansion, was at the forefront. It was also the mother's family of the Empress and the grandfather's family of the Crown Prince. Suyu was not soft-hearted and did not leave any trace of her past. After Suyu recruited more than 10 corrupt and evil officials, she finally regained her spiritual strength. After a lot of tinkering, she was also a bit tired, but it was worth it. Miss, there are soldiers coming. Saishia happened to knock on the door. Suyu got out of bed and pushed the door open, walking out. Miss, hurry to the front hall, we're leaving. Saishia looked gloomy. Saishia, you don't have to go with me. I can sell you a contract to give you your freedom. There's no need to follow me to suffer. The Exile road is not as peaceful as you imagine, Suyu said in a deep voice. The other maidservants and mother-in-law were all sent away by her, but Saishia refused to leave and insisted on accompanying them until death, acting like a couple going through difficult times, which made her feel embarrassed. This girl is sincere. Suyu really doesn't want her to go with her to the bitter cold place. No one can say what kind of trouble will happen on the way. If she is released from slavery, she can still get married and have children. In the future, her son can still pursue his career through education and follow her without any future success. Saishia shook her head firmly and said, Miss, I won't leave. I will follow Mississippi. Okay, let's go out then, Suyu sighed. She bought this girl from Renyazi, and she's the only one in the family, the orphan. She doesn't know where to go even if she's released, just follow her if you really want to. The original owner may not be able to protect her, she can. Her spiritual power can not only pick up treasures, but also attack people. Without being aware of it, she can take people's lives and make them invisible. Her powerful spiritual attack, thanks to the contributions of those zombies in the apocalypse, gave her the opportunity to forge. The guards saw her coming out and asked them to go to the lobby, while he went to other courtyards to find people. The master and servant arrived at the lobby, where the air pressure was low and everyone was anxious. Yuer. The lady immediately called her when she saw her coming. The eldest lady is the mother of the original owner, and she has an older brother above her who is currently studying at the Imperial Academy. It is estimated that she has already been controlled by the usurpation of fame by now. Mother. Suyu stepped forward and took the lady's hand. The first lady is carved out of the same mold as her mother. She has no sense of disobedience. In her memory, the original owner's father looked the same as her father in the apocalypse, and Suyu suspected that the 3 of them had all worn it. Yuer, follow your mother closely later, the eldest lady said anxiously, gripping Suyu's hand. She didn't know what would happen later, as she was afraid of scaring her daughter. My daughter has been pampered and raised by her, when have you seen such a scene? Mother, Yuer is fine. Suyue held her hand and patted it, which was nothing compared to zombies. Grandmother, are you okay? Suyu led the eldest lady to the old lady. The old lady's face was pale and her spirit was poor. When she heard her call, she lifted her head to look at Suyu. Yuer, where are Shuer and the others? Grandmother, we're here. Just as the old lady finished asking, a soft voice came from Su Shui in the second room. Auntie, big sister, Su Shui called out to Madame and Suyu. Madame and Suyu nodded at them. Aunt Air, Suyu also shouted to the second lady sitting beside her. Ah! The second lady's expression wilted. Madam, madam, second madam. Aunt Yao also brought her dragon and phoenix twins. Aunt Yao is the concubine of Suyu's father, giving birth to a pair of twins. She is 10 years old this year and 5 years younger than Suyu. The twins bowed to everyone and then called out one by one, still looking quite impressive. The eldest lady didn't treat the mother and son very well, so she perfunctorily remained silent. Suyue doesn't really like the mother and son three, she is used to being gentle and charming in her daily life. Even Su Qiming followed suit and lacked any masculinity, so he was abandoned by Aunt Yao. Aunt Zhang from the second room also came with her daughter, and after greeting everyone, she waited on the side. The people in Anding Marquis' mansion are not very complicated. In the generation of Duke Su Jingsang, he was the only man and only married one wife, which was the old lady. The old lady had 2 sons and 1 daughter under her knee, and her eldest son Su Ningda married 1 wife and 1 concubine. Her wife was Su Yuanyang, and she had 1 son and 1 daughter. Her son, Su Qiwen, is now 18 years old and is already a scholar, still studying at the National Academy. This scholar's fame must have been ruined. My daughter is Su Yu, who is 15 years old and has already passed her hairpin. Her fiancé A.E. is the 4th prince. Prince Li. My concubine is Aunt Yao, raising those twins. The second son of the old lady, Su Ningyan, has 1 wife and 1 concubine. The second wife also has a son and a daughter. Her eldest son, Su Qicheng, is a 16-year-old and also in the Imperial Academy. She had a child last year. The first daughter is Su Shui, who is 13 this year. She is a quiet girl and is very close to the original owner. My concubine, Aunt Zhang, only gave birth to 1 daughter, named Su He, who is 14 years old this year. Suha is the kind of person who wants to fly up a branch and become a phoenix, with a heart higher than the sky, a life thinner than paper, and an average appearance. Suyue and Sukshui dislike her. Whenever something happens, they stick it on like a dog's skin ointment, unable to tear it off. They want to follow her everywhere and reveal her face. We're all here now, the commander of the Imperial Guard asked a member of the Imperial Guard. Report to the commander, including all the servants who need to follow. The guards replied. If the servants in the family who have committed crimes and have a contract to sell themselves are willing to follow, the government will not force them to sell. The government, which returned their sales contract, cannot control them and let them leave, but they cannot take away every stitch and thread of the master's property. The maid, mother.in.law, and servant beside Su Yu were released by her, so there is no need to drag a group of people into exile. It's just a waste of her energy. On the road of exile, everyone is too busy to care for themselves, it's uncertain who will take care of who. Okay, you all come over, the commander of the Imperial Guard shouted to everyone. The first and second ladies immediately helped the old lady over, with Su Yu and Su Shui together. Everyone stood in front of the commander of the Imperial Guard, who glanced at the crowd and said, I'll take you to meet the old lord. Oh no, Su Jingsang. We'll set off tomorrow. Upon hearing this, everyone felt extremely sad and had to follow the Imperial Guard out of the Duke of Anding's mansion. From then on, there was no more stable Marquis Su's family in the capital. Outside was a very large prison car, which could hold 10 people. 2 cars loaded them all and drove towards the Ministry of Justice. The prisoner's carriage had just left when the commander of the Imperial Guard led the people to steal the house. After half a burning incense stick, several guards returned with constipated faces to report. Commander, there is nothing valuable. What does it mean? The entire Anding Marquis' mansion has less than 1,000 taels of silver, it's just an empty shell, replied a guard. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Emperor of Qi Dizziness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Emperor of Qi Dizziness, I've really seen a ghost. Isn't the Duke of Anding's mansion wealthy enough to rival a country? How could it be so poor? The guards couldn't believe it was true. How could this be? Take me to take a look, Commander. Commander was anxious. The Emperor was afraid that the people of the Duke of Anding's mansion would receive news before sending them to guard in advance. If the Duke of Anding's mansion was an empty shell, wouldn't they be working in vain? The key is that it is impossible to pay tribute to the Emperor, and the Emperor hopes that the property of the stable Marquis's mansion will fill the national treasury. The commander went around and came back. He was dumbfounded and left the guards to guard. He quickly rushed to the palace alone to report to the Emperor. The leader was so anxious that his forehead twitched uncontrollably. This was something he couldn't afford to lose his head on. At the same time, the Crown Prince's mansion and more than a dozen other families discovered that their homes had been completely stolen. For a moment, the capital exploded, and a shocking thief broke out in the capital, robbing all the belongings without even realizing it. A dozen or so ministers rushed towards the palace in a hurry. The emperor was also startled upon hearing this and immediately summoned someone to the imperial study to ask what was going on. Emperor, no, it's not good. The eunuch Jiugong's white face was covered in sweat, and he rushed into the imperial study with a fierce roar, carrying the dust. He knelt down and shouted loudly with a thud. When the ministers heard that Duke Jiugong couldn't stop shouting, they stared at him with a strange expression. Isn't it possible that the treasury had also been looted? What's the big fuss? The emperor felt a thud in his heart, but his face didn't show it. He angrily rebuked the ninth duke. Emperor, the treasury is empty. After Jiugong finished speaking, he was completely paralyzed on the ground. He was frightened. Who dares to steal the treasury? It's on the emperor's head. What? The emperor was shocked when he heard this. He jumped up from the dragon chair, widened his eyes, and spoke sharply. It is unbelievable that the ministers' homes have been stolen, and his treasury has also been stolen. Is this true? The emperor couldn't believe it was true. He must be dreaming, and this kind of thing could only happen in a dream. Your Majesty, you have to make decisions for my concubines. Just as the emperor was furious, the imperial concubines led by the empress rushed into the study, crying and shouting. As soon as they entered, they saw that the study was already full of people kneeling. They are all ministers in the court. Some concubines recognize that it's not her biological father, while others are their biological brothers. What's going on? The concubines immediately quieted down and looked at the enraged emperor on the dragon chair. They were so frightened that they found a place to kneel down in unison, silent as a cicada, not daring to breathe. Empress, why are you bringing people here to cry and cry? The emperor was so angry that his lungs were almost exploding. The matter of the treasury was not yet confirmed. The empress brought people to find it again, so he was also robbed, right? The emperor's heart skipped a beat, with a pair of sinister eyes fixed on the empress and others. As he thought, tears welled up on the empress's pale face. She cautiously replied, Your Highness, all the warehouses of my concubines have been stolen. Your Highness, send someone to investigate. Those are all the assets of my concubines. You still have a lot of wealth. Which family of the concubines is poor? They have treasures to offer as tribute at any time, as well as rewards from the emperor. Losing it is even more heartbreaking than losing their own son. That's all their capital for settling down in the palace. Bang! Upon hearing this, the emperor completely disregarded the image of his own emperor. He was so angry that he picked up something from the table and smashed it onto the ground, causing it to fall to pieces. Damn it! Who is it? Who is it? I'm going to skin him. The emperor gritted his teeth and was so angry that his heart was filled with blood. His throat was sweet, and he almost spat out old blood. His tall figure shook a few times. "Your Majesty." Jiao Gonggang was half scared to death. Regardless of whether the emperor would blame him for cutting off his head, he stood up and supported the emperor, including the empress. The two of them helped the emperor sit down and fed him some water. "Your Majesty, are you okay? Don't scare me. If there's nothing left, there's nothing left. I don't want anything anymore." "Your Majesty values the dragon's body," the empress said in fear, taking her breath. The emperor closed his eyes to ease his emotions and waved his hand at the empress, saying, "The empress is taking people back. I will immediately send someone to investigate. We must investigate, we must investigate. Who dares to steal? What kind of family did they steal from? The treasury, the palace, and the families of the ministers." Previously, I heard from Duke Jiao that he still didn't believe it. The treasury was heavily guarded, so there was no possibility of theft. However, like all the concubines, he couldn't help but not believe it. If there is organization and premeditated theft, it would be a big deal. Someone is going to rebel against him, to overthrow his country. The empress nodded at the words and saluted the emperor with great blessings. She walked down the hall and glanced at the father of the ministers kneeling in the hall. Seeing him, like the other ministers, feeling grief-stricken, her heart was half cold. Perhaps he had also been robbed, right? Her support. The queen let out a mournful cry in her heart and almost fainted. And when the ministers heard that the concubines had also been stolen, their hearts were even colder than those of the empress, completely cold. Just in the imperial study, under the emperor's watchful eye, they dared not inquire about the situation and had to find an opportunity to ask clearly. The queen whimpered twice and quickly left with her concubines. "Duke Ronghua, I will hand over this case to you. We must capture the thieves and retrieve the stolen items. Additionally, we cannot make public about the affairs of the treasury. If any information is leaked, I will take your heads." The emperor is the emperor, even if his lungs are twisted in pain, he can quickly calm down. Rong Guogong and others were warned, fully aware of the consequences of theft and emptiness in the national treasury. After everyone left, they quickly went to investigate the case. In the face of theft from the national treasury, it's nothing but fart. After the ministers had just stepped down, the crown prince and his commander also arrived. "Crown Prince, do you think the crown prince's mansion has also been stolen?" The emperor's hands were trembling. "Yes, father, the crown prince's mansion has been completely stolen." The crown prince felt heartbroken as his wealth, which was comparable to that of a country, disappeared out of thin air in broad daylight. The emperor sat down on a chair, pressing his hands on his temples and looking at the panicked commander, asking, "Han Tongling, won't you come and tell me that the Prince N's mansion has also been stolen?" Commander Han trembled and said, "Yes, your Majesty, all the valuable things in the Duke of Anding's mansion are gone." The emperor felt a sweetness in his throat and a pain in his heart upon hearing these words. "Your Majesty, I will pass on the imperial physician." Jiao Gong saw the emperor's pale face and immediately said, "No, you all go down." "I have already told you about this matter," the emperor said weakly to the crown prince and Han Tong. The crown prince hesitated to speak, but when he saw the emperor's state, he swallowed back his words and took action against General Han. The emperor rested for a while before letting Duke Jiao take him to the treasury. When he saw the empty treasury, the emperor couldn't help but spit out old blood and his eyes turned black and dizzy. "Your Majesty, your Majesty." End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Prison Storm. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Prison Storm. Jiao shouted and immediately called for someone to bring the emperor back to his palace, and the imperial physician was summoned. At this moment, the initiator did not know that what she had done was discovered so quickly, causing many people to be anxious and uneasy. At this moment, their group was temporarily detained in the prison of Jing Zhaoyin. Originally scheduled to depart on the same day, there are other reasons for changing the departure date to tomorrow. The female family members are locked together, and the male members are locked together. The prison carried an indescribable smell of blood and mold, which made people nauseous. Su Yu is holding 10 people in this cell, including the old lady, the first lady, and the second lady. The 3 of them are about to vomit their intestines. The smell filled this small prison cell, and Su Yu couldn't help it anymore. Su Shui also vomited along with her. Caixia, Li Mama, Song Mama, please help your grandmother quickly. Mom and Auntie move here, and I'll tidy up. After they finished vomiting, Su Yu suppressed the surging waves in her heart and called on the maids who were waiting beside the old lady to move them to the other end of the rotten straw mat. A few people nodded and moved the old lady and the others over. Su Yu then grabbed a handful of hay from under the tattered mat and spread it on top, actually receiving the filth into the space. That grass is just a cover-up. There is 10 acres of land in the space, which is now bare and full of zombies that cannot be killed every day in the apocalypse. There is no time to plant the land. The collected filth is decomposed and absorbed by the black soil in just a few seconds, transforming into the energy needed for space. Everyone has empty stomachs, so they don't vomit anymore. They are all leaning against the wall and wilting. But everyone is curious, why can Su Yu, who is usually pampered, tolerate the smell here? Especially Caixia and Madame, they knew Su Yu better than the roundworms in their own stomachs. How could she bear it? Su Yu took everyone's doubts seriously and didn't explain anything. There would be inexplicable things happening in the future, so how could she explain them one by one? Let them get used to it first, and once they get used to it, they won't feel anything strange. It's just that her family has undergone a huge change, and she has grown up to be more sensible. Yuer, did you see your grandpa, dad, big brother, and others when you came in? The eldest lady asked weakly. No, mother, grandpa, they should be somewhere else. Su Yu checked with her mental strength after entering, and they were not in Jing Zhaoyin's prison, but temporarily detained in the heavenly prison. It was just that they had been beaten and their buttocks were blossoming. The injury is quite serious, so it's difficult for Su Yu to say at this moment. The estimated change in itinerary is that they cannot walk. They haven't adapted yet, their bodies are weak, especially the old lady. When she hears the news, she is afraid to turn her back in one breath. Moreover, she couldn't explain that she could see everything inside the prison in Jing Zhaoyin's prison. When it comes to her robbery, wouldn't she just deceive her? It's possible that she might be mistaken for some kind of monster, and the consequences would be unimaginable. I hope they're okay, the eldest lady said anxiously. Mother, you don't have to worry. I think Grandpa and the others will be fine. The Emperor won't take their lives. The main leader is still fine, Su Yu whispered in her ear as she approached the eldest lady. Sigh. Madam let out a long sigh, the meal is ready. Several prison guards came over with buckets and set up a row of bowls outside the prison, one for Kanji, the other for Hair Nest and Hair Nest. Eat quickly, don't delay me from collecting the dishes. After they finished dividing, one of the prison guards shouted in annoyance, as if delivering food to them was a very unlucky thing. Su Yu only glanced at him. The jailer had a bad attitude and didn't do anything else. If he dared to act recklessly, she didn't mind him becoming the first person to kill here. Caixia and Song Mama brought in the bowl and Waowutu, and they looked pale. The food was really terrible, and they were just servants. Where could the masters eat such food? In the whole mansion, dogs don't even eat this kind of thing. They looked at the things in their hands and looked at the lady. Su Yu has seen for a long time that the kanji with little water can be used as a mirror to look at, as well as the black nest head that is as hard as stone. I don't know what it is made of, so it's hard to swallow it. She didn't have any surprises. After all, this is a prison. They are here to be imprisoned, not VIP guests. Some food is good, and there are no delicacies for them to eat. What a thing. This thing that even dogs don't eat, take it away. I don't eat, I don't eat. The cries and curses of Su He and Su Yen could be heard from the next cell. Suyue and Madame exchanged a glance and shook their heads. These two thought they were the daughters of the Marquis's mansion, and at this moment, they were still showing off in the prison cell. It really doesn't matter. The prison guard, who had not yet gone far, heard this and hurriedly returned. Without saying a word, he whipped his whip and slammed it fiercely onto the cell, cursing, "If you don't eat it and pull it down, you will all be prisoners. How dare you shout in front of the masters? Do you think it's the young master of the Marquis's mansion, madam?" Ah! Suha and Suyen were frightened by the whip and threw themselves on their aunt, crying. This. Suyue cursed inwardly, but the jailer showed mercy and did not throw the whip at them. The jailer who swung his whip looked up and around, his eyes full of warning. If anyone is restless and yells loudly, it's not enough to scare you. Then he gave Su and he a fierce glare before turning around and leaving. With the shock of the prison guard, the neighboring cell became quiet, and the sound of eating came, only crying while eating. "Bring it over to eat," the old lady said weakly as she woke up and opened her eyes. Saishia and Mama Song took Kanji and Haiwotu. The old lady just furrowed her brows slightly and ate in small bites. When everyone saw the old lady eating, they silently picked it up and ate. Suyue took a few slow bites, which were really hard to swallow, so she only drank the bowl of rice soup. Here, she really can't take out the things in the space for everyone to eat. We can only make do for tonight and find an opportunity tomorrow to bring out some food for everyone to eat. The food on the exiled road is only worse than it is now, not better than it is now. Such poor food only hangs my life. The people of Su Mansion are used to living in luxury. If they eat such food, in less than a month, half of the people here will not be able to survive and die on the road. Especially the old lady and the second lady, who are older and have delicate and expensive bodies, must have fallen first. This is the last thing Suyu wants to see. I lived very well in the residence of the Marquis of Anding, and was loved by the old lady, parents, and brother. She came to accept this body, and she also has the ability not to disappoint their favor. Perhaps this is why the heavens asked her to wear it, to take over and protect her family. There was a lot of food to eat in the space. While looting the imperial palace, she also took a walk to the imperial kitchen. The food that the dog emperor and his concubines ate was truly delicious, and she took in all the delicacies, not even the ingredients. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Spiritual Attack. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Spiritual Attack, and it's still a bit hot. I'll definitely find a chance to give them something to eat tomorrow. We must not let the old ladies fall. Well, before we leave tonight, let's go to the Thai hospital for a walk. Grandpa, father, and uncle need a lot of medicine for their injuries, so let's use the medicinal materials from the Thai hospital as compensation. The Li Wang was also seriously injured. The emperor was afraid that he would use Yaomo, so he locked his Pipa bone with an iron chain, preventing him from using his martial arts skills. That dog emperor is really a ruthless master. They all say that tigers are poisonous and do not eat their children. This dog emperor is even worse than tigers. She did not terminate her engagement with the divorced king, it was a marriage bestowed by the emperor. Even if they were demoted to commoners, their engagement could not be terminated by themselves. Relieve the crime of where the Duke of Anding came from. The injuries on Li Wang's body also require medicinal herbs. For the sake of his poor condition, I will also help him treat them when the time comes. As soon as they finished eating, the prison guard immediately took away the bowl and swung a few lashes as a warning before leaving. After the first and second ladies took care of the old lady and lay down, they sat with clothes against the wall. "Yuer, come and sit next to your mother," said the lady, patting the empty space next to her. "Okay." Suyue led Sushue over, Suyue sat down next to the first lady, and Sushue sat next to the second lady. Don't be afraid, sleep next to your mother. The eldest lady extended her arm to embrace Su Yu and leaned against her shoulder, gently patting her like she did when she was a child. Su Yu closed her eyes and enjoyed this rare warmth. For a long time, there was no noise in the prison cell, only the sound of everyone's breathing when Su Yu finally released her spiritual energy. She went to the palace, found the imperial hospital, and moved the herbs, medical books, pharmaceutical tools, and medicine pots inside into the space before regaining her spiritual power. One night passed. Dong dong dong. Get up, everyone get up. As soon as dawn broke, the prison guards knocked the gong and woke everyone up. Everyone rubbed their eyes and helped each other up. All come out. The doors of all 3 cells were opened, and everyone inside came out, following the prison guard towards the cell door. As they approached the door, a prison guard brought a basket of ankle shackles. Everyone wears it. Immediately, prison guard Jia brought ankle shackles to the woman walking at the front, preparing to put them on. That ankle shackle weighed at least 20 pounds, and it was better for young people to wear it. Su Yu looked at the old lady and her own mother, and it was only one night. They were already haggard and exhausted. Can they walk with this on? Su Yu's heart suddenly became angry. What terrible crime did the Marquis's mansion commit to suffer from? At that moment, Su Yu walked out and said to the jailer, "Brother jailer, we are all elderly, weak, sick, and disabled here. Why wear these ankle shackles? Let these old and weak women and children run away without being able to escape." Prisoner Jia looked up and glared fiercely at Su Yu. "I'm a prisoner now. How dare you talk to me like this? We are just demoted to commoners, not criminals," Su Yu said coldly to prison guard Jia without fear. The law of Shifan Kingdom explicitly stipulates that exiled commoners who have been demoted are different from prisoners, and they are exempt from wearing torture equipment, nor are they subject to ink and war punishments. Pop. Prisoner B on the side swung a whip in front of Su Yu and said, "Why, at this moment, you dare to bring the law to your grandfather? Today, your grandfather will kill you. Who can help your grandfather?" No way. Madam was so scared that her heart trembled. She quickly pulled Su Yu behind her and apologized with a smile, "Officer, I'm not sensible." "Officer, I understand. Let's wear it. I'll come first." Speaking, extend your feet. "Mother, it's not possible." Su Yu said nothing to let these prison guards with chicken feathers and arrows bully them. She pulled over the eldest lady, unleashed her spiritual energy, and attacked the prison guard A. Prisoner A threw his ankle shackles in his hand and collapsed on the ground, clutching his head in both hands, screaming in agony. "What's going on?" Prisoner C was frightened and quickly went over to investigate what was going on. And prisoner B was so frightened that he stayed in front of Su Yu at a loss. This. Madam was so frightened when she saw the well-behaved person suddenly behave like this. Her already haggard face turned even paler. "Mother, this person may have suffered from an old illness, we are not afraid," Su Yu patted Madam. The people of the Marquis's mansion silently watched the howling and rolling prison guard Jia on the ground, cursing inwardly that he deserved it. "It's time for retribution. Hurry up and call the boss." Prisoner B couldn't make any sense of it, and he turned around and shouted to scare Prisoner B, who was dumbfounded. Prisoner B quickly ran out after regaining consciousness. "What did you do?" Prisoner B stood up and glared fiercely at the people in the Marquis's mansion. "Don't speak recklessly without evidence, this adult. What can we do standing here under your nose? Perhaps his old illness suddenly broke out, and you are questioning us without sending him to the hospital. Are you trying to hold the blame for us?" Su Yu stood in front of him and questioned Jailer Bing. Prisoner B looked at the troublemaker with a sinister expression. She was the princely, no, the fiancée AE of the commoner Murom Li. A beautiful woman raised in a deep boudoir with such a domineering aura. Is this a lady from a wealthy family? His companions don't have the delicate handwriting of this beautiful woman, and he wouldn't believe it even if he were killed. Girl, it's better to be obedient and not cause trouble. You haven't set off yet. Prisoner Bing said in a strange tone. He dared to be so arrogant and domineering, not afraid of being messed up halfway, and many beautiful women died in exile. Su Yu raised her eyebrows and said, "Are you threatening us?" "I dare not, young lady, please take care of yourself, humph." "What happened?" Prisoner C said as the prison leader hurried over. The prison guard A, who was rolling on the ground, no longer felt a headache. Upon hearing this, he got up and pointed at Su Yu, saying, "Boss, it's her, it must be her." "What's wrong with me, you say?" Su Yu asked contemptuously. I. Prisoner A pointed at Su Yu and couldn't say anything, saying that she did something wrong. Where is the evidence? Besides, his head is no longer painful now, he only has some remaining strength. If you can't say it, don't climb and bite people recklessly. Su Yuebai gave him a glance, daring to threaten her and not mind doing it again. What's going on? The prison warden roared again, and when he asked, no one actually dumped him. Boss, this girl says they are commoners and don't need to wear ankle shackles, said Jailer B, without mentioning the fact that Jailer A was rolling on the ground. This is really a damn thing. The person who was in excruciating pain just now has been fine for so long. Oh. You said that. The prison guard looked at Su Yu with a gloomy gaze and asked. Well, it's what I said. The laws of Shifeng Kingdom stipulate that we are not criminals, we are just demoted commoners, Su Yu said calmly. You are familiar with the law, so don't wear it. Take it away, said the prison guard, taking a deep look at Su Yu. Yes, prison guard Bing responded. Follow me, he coldly shouted to everyone in the Marquis's mansion. The people of Ho Mansion silently followed behind prisoner B, their eyes filled with confusion and fear for the future. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Departure. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Departure. The leader's surname is Qin, with a national character face, and he is about 30 years old. After handing over to prison guard B, he looked at the people in the Marquis's mansion with a stern face and said, I am the leader escorting your servants. As long as you are safe and sound on the way to exile, you will not cause trouble and everything will be fine. You will arrive in Hanzhou smoothly. If not, there will be plenty of bitterness for them to eat. After speaking, he waved his hand and asked his subordinates to put lighter handcuffs on everyone. Clumsy ankle shackles can be avoided, hand shackles cannot be avoided, and after running for a while, their servant couldn't bear to walk around. The people in the Marquis's mansion also accepted the handcuffs on their wrists, which were better than the heavy ankle shackles. Su Yue's eyes were slightly cold, indicating that it was already prepared. Not only did she need to wear ankle shackles, but she also had to wear this handcuff. I really don't want to give the people of the Marquis's mansion away to survive. After everyone put them on, the attendants escorted everyone from the Marquis's mansion to embark on a journey of exile. The Tenli Pavilion outside the capital has always been a place for relatives to send things to exiles. Before they arrived, Su Yu saw people waiting there from afar. But what is waiting for is not the person who delivers things for them, but the grandfather and Murong Li, as well as a group of people from Murong Li's external family, the general's mansion in Jinyuan, who should be waiting for the convergence of the people from their Marquis's mansion. Yuer, is that your father and his family over there? The eldest lady saw it and asked with a light sip. It should be them, Mom, don't worry, Su Yu comforted. She saw that Grandpa and the other men were being held up. Murong Li, being led by someone, was like a dog, truly like a lost dog, making people unable to bear to look directly at him. But the servant holding him was like the owner walking a dog, like a precious dog walking, with a haughty expression. And Murong Li was like a soulless puppet, letting it play with. Su Yue's eyes furrowed as she wanted to blow up the servant's head, but there was still a second one. Forget it, let the dog emperor keep this account and ask him to wash his neck and wait for her. If Su Yu would let the dog emperor go, then hell. Sure enough, as they approached, they heard a servant shouting, "Let's go." I didn't give them a chance to see each other at all. With the cries of the servants, everyone reluctantly continued on an unknown journey. Why are they so ruthless? They don't even show it to me. Madame saw Su Ningde being framed from a distance, feeling unbearable pain in her heart. The old lady also saw the old marquis and immediately fainted. The servant ordered the women to carry the old lady and not to fall behind. I walked for an hour as soon as I left. At this moment, the sun was rising high and the temperature was getting hotter and hotter. Someone had fainted an hour ago, but the servant splashed water on them and continued walking without mercy. He showed no mercy towards Morongli, as the servant holding him occasionally forcefully pulled off the iron chain, causing him to sweat and bleed in pain. If someone can't look over and say a few words, the whip-wielding servant will swing it with a whip. The old marquis, Mr. Su, and Mr. Su are doing better. They have been being carried away by the guards all along. The eldest and second brothers are not injured, but they are also wearing heavy ankle and hand shackles. It's already great that 2 weak scholars can persevere without falling down. The general's large group of men were all wearing ankle and hand shackles, especially the general who also wore wooden shackles, while the women and children wore ankle shackles. They, like the female relatives of the Marquis's mansion, are pampered, but they also have brains. They know that their current situation is different from the past, and their lives are held in the hands of these ordinary servants who are not valued. At first, there were arguments and complaints like Su He and Su Yan, but they were all forcibly stopped and not put in a difficult situation. But some of the servants' eyes fell on the young and beautiful female relatives. The concubines in the general's mansion are much more numerous than those in the marquis's mansion. At a glance, there are no less than a dozen, each with a lingering charm. There are also the girls from the general's mansion, each as beautiful as a flower. Su Yu noticed the actions of the servants, as this place is not far from the capital and is not suitable for her to take action. She glanced at the energetic servants and saw their posture without any intention of stopping to rest. "Mother, Auntie too, can you hold on?" Su Yu frowned as she looked at the fainting first lady and second lady. Their lips were dry and cracked, their faces pale, and sweat as big as beans flowed down their cheeks. The two shook their heads, and the doctor said humanely, "You can still persevere. Yuer doesn't have to worry, but Yuer, can you?" The eldest lady felt extremely heartbroken. Her daughter grew up like she had grown up overnight, walking for so long without even shouting. Still persevering with strength, seeing her heart shatter. Suyue shook her head. She was not tired at all, with spiritual support. As long as her feet could walk, she could walk 180 miles a day without any problem. At this moment, all of her mental energy is focused on the servants in front of her. If they have to stop, they will have to find the leader to launch a mental attack. Only by attacking him can he order a rest. Suyue quickly found the leader and fiercely attacked his brain with mental strength. He only heard the leader shout and then squatted down with his head in his arms. This time, Suyu had a sense of propriety. She didn't make him dizzy from the pain, but just made his head prick like a needle. Sure enough, the pain of that moment passed, and the leader stood up, tilting his head in confusion, as if thinking about what was going on. Suyue attacked again, and the leader crouched down with his head hugged. "Boss, what's wrong with you?" A servant saw it and asked him. The pain at the head had passed again. He pressed his head and looked at the scorching sun above his head, saying, "Maybe it's too hot for heatstroke. You go ahead and find a place to rest for a while, let's have something to eat." "Officer." "Yes, boss." The servants were eager to leave. They didn't want to leave in such a big sun for a long time. After receiving the order, they quickly ran to the front. "There happens to be a small forest ahead where you can rest. Upon seeing this, Suyu stopped attacking the leader and supported the eldest lady forward. The people behind saw that they could rest and quickened their pace. When the ones behind them arrived, the ones in front had already stopped, sitting and resting in the woods one after another. The servants were taking turns eating. The first and second ladies disregarded their exhausted bodies and headed straight to Mr. Su and Mr. Su. "Song Mama, take care of your grandmother and I'll go see my grandfather," Suyu said to the woman next to the old lady. Song Mama nodded and said, "Miss, rest assured that the old slaves will take good care of the old lady." "Okay. Saixia, come with me." Suyu called on Saixia, and the master and servant came to Qin leader's place first. As soon as the servants arrived, they were drinking water and eating cakes. The people of the Marquis's mansion didn't bring anything when they went out, so naturally they didn't have anything to eat or drink. Even if they had these servants, they wouldn't share them with the prisoners. "If you want to eat, you have to exchange something." Suyu approached the Qin leader and said, "Qin leader, how do you sell your water and food? I want to buy some from you." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. You successfully angered me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. You successfully angered me. Qin Lingtu looked up at Suyu and said coldly, "I won't sell it. If I want to eat, I'll figure out my own way. Your food will be eaten once in the morning and once in the evening. You have already eaten the food in prison this morning, so I will send you food tonight." Suyue's face sank. Qin, the leader, was avenging the prison guards. When did they eat breakfast? They haven't even taken a sip of water. Really not selling? Suyu kindly asked again. "If you don't sell it, come and take it if you have the ability," Qin leader sneered and finished eating on his own. Suyue looked coldly at Qin leader and said, "It's great that you have successfully angered me. If you insist on toasting, not eating, or punishing, she will attack Qin leader with great mental strength." "Ah!" Qin leader let out a scream and fell to the ground like jailer Jia, hugging his head and rolling. Suyu showed no mercy in this blow. "Boss!" A servant saw it and immediately rushed over, surrounding Suyu's master and servants. One person went to check Qin's leader, while the others stared at Suyu. One of them angrily asked, "What did you do to our leader?" Suyue clapped her hands and smiled, saying, "I didn't do anything. I just asked Qin leader to sell us some food and water. He didn't want to. Maybe even the heavens couldn't bear to see it anymore. The punishment he brought down is the same. I'm full of nonsense. I'll sell it to you. You're not going to lose your mind, are you? You're really full of imaginations," the servant sneered. With his hair up, he couldn't give anything more except what he should have. Those who had intended to make a few money from these people were also in vain. "It's not up to you to decide whether to sell or not," Suyu said in a deep voice. Today, she didn't take these people seriously, and there were so many young moths behind. Qin, the leader, no longer felt any pain at the moment. He was helped up by the servant, looked at Suyu with resentment, and took a deep breath. Unexpectedly, this seemingly harmless young lady had a very evil side. The prison guard had told him before that he still didn't believe it, and now he experienced it. He completely believed it. He said to the servant, "Go get them water and food to eat." The servant hesitated and didn't go. Didn't he agree? How could he change his mind? The boss is not afraid of being punished like this. Can't you hear me, can you? Listen to me, Qin leader scolded the servant angrily. He didn't understand the meaning of the servant yet, not because he was afraid of being blamed by the higher-ups. These people are so afraid of things, and if they blame him again, it's not because he's the leader who is holding them up. Blaming others will not lead to death, but if you don't listen now, there is a possibility of death. I don't know what kind of magic this little girl is using. Headache can make people want to die, it's so painful, it's hard to speak. The servant opened his mouth and finally ran to the carriage to get something. Su Yu gave Qin the leader a brilliant smile and said, Qin the leader is really good. How much silver does he have at noon every day? When he arrives, I will give you 1.5 pennies. Although Su Yu was laughing like a spring breeze, it was extremely glaring in Qin's leader's eyes and implied a warning. He gave Su Yu a deep glance and said, I remember Miss Su's words. Su Yu nodded and led Saixia towards the old marquee. Throughout the entire process, Saixia was bewildered. She was not foolish. The scene at the entrance of the prison cell could be said to be a coincidence, but now it's just a coincidence that she believes it. Saixia looked at the young lady who was vastly different from her usual self, and a strange feeling arose in her heart. Is this young lady from before? The young lady in the past was just like an ordinary lady from a wealthy family. Not to mention, she remained calm and composed in the face of these extremely vicious servants, even in prison, as if in a boudoir. The scent that could suffocate people seemed to be inaudible to the young lady. If you see local ruffians and hooligans, you will be scared to death. From a heart-to-heart perspective, such a young lady only has the ability to protect herself on the road of exile, which is difficult to say for a young lady in the past. She also prefers such a young lady. Qin, the leader, looked at the backs of the master and servant, and saw that they were heading towards the old lord. He cast a gloating look at the servants over there, allowing them to taste the tricks of these little girls. At that time, they could all be punished. When Su Yu arrived in front of the old marquis, she saw Su Qiwen supporting him, while the old marquis leaned against a tree with his eyes closed. His face was pale, his grey hair and beard were messy, and his grey prison uniform was dirty, covered in sweat and blood, emitting a nauseating taste of food. Su Yu felt angry at the sight and immediately shouted, Grandfather, big brother. Sister. Are you okay? Su Qiwen heard the shout and turned back abruptly. The worries in his eyes couldn't be hidden. He looked up and down at Su Yu and saw that she was clean and in good spirits before taking a breath. It's okay. She glanced at the servant eating on the side and said, Call your leader over. The servant was enjoying his meal when he heard Su Yu's words and pointed at himself disdainfully, saying, Are you talking to me, young lady? Otherwise. What benefits does that little lady give? The servant looked at Su Yu with ill intentions, his eyes scanning back and forth. I never imagined that Muron Li's fiancée A.E., the deposed king, was so young and beautiful. The servant swallowed his saliva, and if he presses this little girl under him, sister, come over and have big brother pick out his sunny eyes. Su Qiwen saw it and his eyes widened in anger, almost spewing out flames. How could his sister tolerate this disgusting thing and have bad ideas? Big brother, I'll do it. Just help your grandfather. Su Yu held down Su Qiwen, who was exploding, and looked at the servant. The sergeant looked disdainfully at the brother and sister you sent me here. The exiled prisoner was really shameless. When he had enough to eat and drink, he would see how he would deal with them. She threw a disgusting look at Su Yu. Seeking death. Su Yu was burning with anger and dared to desecrate her. Although her body was talented, it was still well developed, with buttocks and breasts. Coupled with her beautiful appearance, it was most likely to arouse men's imagination. I was already angry in my heart, but this guy even had an idea for her. So, let him know that Prince Ma has 5 eyes. She gave a powerful mental blow. Ah! The servant let out a loud cry and fell to the ground in pain, fainting. When unconscious, the painful face was still twitching. Humph! Su Yu snorted coldly, as this person woke up both foolish and foolish. Sister. Su Qiwen was stunned by this sudden scene. You. The old marquis was awakened and shouted loudly, thinking that something had happened to his granddaughter. Grandfather, don't be nervous. Come and let big brother use the medicine for you. Su Yu waved her hand and took out 2 bottles of medicine from her sleeve, 1 bottle of hemostatic medicine and 1 bottle of anti-inflammatory medicine, and gave them to Su Qiwen. Su Qiwen quickly took 2 bottles of medicine and looked at them, which were just right. He didn't expect his sister to find a way to buy the medicine. This is not what Suyu bought, it's all patent medicine from Thai hospital. Sister, turn your back. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Leading the Way in Governance. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Leading the Way in Governance. Although the old Marquis is their own grandfather, there are differences between men and women, and the grandfather is injured on his buttocks. Okay. Suyue pulled Saixia around. Saixia, go call 2 servants to help. Suyu thought about it and said, Dad and Uncle will both need medication later. Yes, miss. Saixia hurriedly ran back. Suyue, on the other hand, scanned the forest with her mind. She was looking for bamboo, and later she would chop down some bamboo and trees to make a few stretchers. Grandpa, father, and second uncle couldn't hold on, oh, and that Li Wang. Seeing how miserable he was, Suyu felt a surge of sympathy in her heart. Let's also make him a stretcher. What's going on here? The commotion on this side alarmed the other servants, and 3 of them ran over, pointing to the ground and asking. It was the leader who was asking. Has he gone crazy? Suyu said calmly. It was her mercy that made him become dementia. If he had a temper in the end of the world, how could this person have a life? She glanced at the leader who was about to explode and saw that she was still very kind. Just in an instant, she changed her face. This leader has only been here for so long, is he completely ignoring these criminals? Is it still the intention of letting the guards harass the prisoners casually? If that's the case, you servants will suffer a great loss, Suyu muttered in her heart. The leader's surname was Zhang. He glanced at Su Qiwen drugging the old Marquis, and then at the servant lying on the ground. He signaled to the 2 people beside him, and they walked towards Su Qiwen. He crouched down to look at the servants on the ground, believing her to be a ghost, going crazy, afraid of being knocked out by someone, right? Suyue noticed the behavior of the 3 of them, not allowing the servants to trouble her grandfather. She only used her mental strength, and when the 2 servants felt a headache, she stopped. Without pain, she lifted her steps forward, and then her mental strength attacked again. What's going on? The 2 of them looked at each other strangely. Can't they get close to the old Marquis? What's going on between you 2? Zhang, the leader, looked at the servant on the ground and saw that he had indeed fainted. It must have been a good thing done by this young lady. He got up and was about to question Suyu. He didn't want to see their strange behavior, so he couldn't help but ask. The 2 of them quickly went back and whispered in his ear for a while, Boss, this is so strange. As long as we take 1 step forward, it's like we've been pricked in the head. Upon hearing this, Zhang, the leader, was taken aback. He thought of Suyu, who had a strange gaze before him, and only then did he realize that she was different from others. As a wealthy young lady, she seemed to have nothing to do along the way. He was clean and tidy, unlike other prisoners who were as haggard and full of energy. Does this little lady know martial arts? Has internal strength? Leader, let's send out all the lunch and keep an account of the amount of silver. We'll give you a lot of money when we arrive at the destination, Suyu said quickly, too lazy to talk to him. If you don't want to, all of you are going crazy, and I can still get something to eat. Suyu didn't say a word to Zhang, but quickly said again, with a threatening tone. After hearing this, Zhang was shocked in his heart. He looked at the unconscious servant on the ground and 2 equally shocked servants. Thinking about the previous headache he had had twice before, he nodded in agreement. A hero does not suffer immediate losses, and the young lady's demands are not excessive. Originally, there were only 3 meals a day, and it was the orders of the superior to only give 2 meals a day. Give it, give it. The young lady said to give the silver, and he was not afraid that she wouldn't give it. Coincidentally, I could make a big profit. I was still thinking about how to extract money from these criminals before, so I brought it to my door. Besides, he has just started his exile journey, and if he doesn't believe it, he can't find a way to cure this little lady. Ah and ah San, go and feed yourself by the hair. The leader commanded in a low voice, and it was evident that he was suppressing his emotions. Although he compromised verbally, no one could bear this cowardly anger. He was threatened by a criminal and even shouted at them. It was already quite good that he didn't draw his sword to strike people. But John, the leader, did not. His hand tightly clasped the sword around his waist, and he could endure it. He believed that his sword had not yet been cut off, and his head would surely experience a strange and excruciating pain. Ah and Ah San glanced at Su Yu and quickly ran away, far away from the female demon's head. Coincidentally, Cai Xia arrived with 2 servants from the Su mansion, and they immediately stepped forward to help. She didn't need her here anymore. Her eyes twitched around Zhang Ling too, and she came up with a plan. There was a ready-made servant's command, and she said, Ling Tu, could you please make 5 stretchers later? There are many of you, strong, and I believe it won't be difficult for you. Don't worry, I'll keep your wages in mind. I won't lose you a penny. Zhang, the leader, was squinting his eyes to think of a way to deal with Su Yu. When he suddenly heard her words, his lungs almost exploded. Who is the person who was exiled? Surprisingly, they were summoned to serve, and just now they compromised and gave them food. Is this endless? You. Leader Zhang couldn't help it anymore. The clay figurine still had a third of his anger. Damn it, this little rascal was really bullying people. Just as he was about to curse, he didn't want his head to hurt. It's really you. What have you done to us? Let me tell you, if something happens to our staff, don't think it's okay. Zhang shook his head and spoke harshly to Su Yu. Oh, it's really a bit of backbone to not shed tears without seeing the coffin. Su Yu sneered and launched another mental attack. Zhang, the leader, was clinging to his head and was about to run. Want to run? There's no way out. If we don't subdue him today, how can we use them in the future? Su Yu glanced at the person who had received the food, as well as Su Qiwen and the others, but none of them noticed. She ran a few steps and grabbed Zhang's head, throwing a handkerchief in her hand. She immediately blocked his mouth and carried him into the dense forest, roughly throwing him to the ground. After kicking him a few more times, he launched a series of mental attacks on him. Fool, if you dare to threaten her, if you don't let him be honest today, she won't be Su Yu. Zhang Ling's headache was so severe that he knelt down repeatedly begging for mercy. Woo-woo. Zhang, the leader, pointed his fingers and mouth. Honest. Su Yu grabbed his collar and asked in a gentle tone, with no hint of her anger. Zhang nodded as if pounding garlic. He was very honest and never dared to provoke this aunt again. He couldn't even see her, and seeing him gave him a headache. It's too painful, it's unbearable. He has lived for a long time and has never seen such a method before. He has no idea what this female demon's head is using, which can make them suffer so much that they want to bite their tongues and commit suicide. Get out of here, remember what I said. Also, untie the chains of Li Wang and treat his injuries. If you dare to act recklessly, don't blame me for taking your life. When Su Yu spoke, her fierce aura spread out, and she was so scared that Zhang's pants were wet, and a smell of urine spread. Su Yu took a few steps back in disgust, and with a disdainful expression, she walked towards the dense forest with a cold snort. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Confession. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Confession. This forest is not small, very dense. Why not go and hunt a few wild chickens and wait for the stewed chicken soup to replenish for Grandpa and his team? The things in the space are really difficult to take out. But she actually took out a pot of soup and had a delicious meal. After Zhang, the leader in the forest, reacted and was so scared that his 3 souls were missing too. He stumbled out of the forest and quickly went to do what Suyu had instructed. Just now, it was too scary. How could there be that terrifying anger on a petite young lady? That violent aura made him tremble. Only those who crawled out of the pile of dead people had such a violent aura. Even General Yuan is not as good as this female demon. General Yuan is a famous god of war general in the Shifeng kingdom, killing not only 10,000 but also 8,000 enemies. With such momentum, as long as one stops there, it will scare people away. Zhang, the leader, couldn't figure out where a wealthy young lady who was raised in a deep boudoir came from with that aura, that fierce aura. He didn't know that in the apocalypse, there were countless zombies dying in Su Yu's hands, and General Yuan didn't have enough to see in front of her. "Boss, what are you doing?" Zhang led the way to the carriage where things were placed, and as soon as the servant smelled the smell of urine on his body, he pinched his nose and asked. "Get lost." Zhang, the leader, kicked away the servant and quickly got on the carriage to change clothes. Suyu wandered around in the forest and indeed found several wild chickens. She used her spiritual power to directly attack the chickens, and they died so much that they could no longer die. There were 15 wild chickens, and Suyu threw 11 wild chickens into the space and carried 4 wild chickens out of the forest. "Miss, you." As soon as she came out, she saw Caixia. Without seeing her, Caixia searched around and breathed a sigh of relief as she emerged intact from the forest. Just looking at the wild chicken in Suyu's hand, Caixia was so surprised that she couldn't speak. "The wild chicken you beat is just right. Take it and stew it with Grandma Song and the others. If there's anything missing, ask Leader Qin for it." Suyu threw the 4 wild chickens to Caixia and walked towards Grandpa Su. "Oh, good." Caixia regained her senses and looked at the wild chicken at her feet. "It's so surreal. Her young lady can still hunt." Suyu came to Grandpa Su, and Su Qiwen and his wife had already bandaged his injury. Now, he leaned on his wife and slept over. Uncle Su is similar to the old Marquis. He is unkempt and has a frighteningly yellow face, but his facial features are exactly the same as Su Yu's last father. Suyu's eyes immediately turned red. In the end of the world, her father loved her the most. "Mom, big brother, isn't Dad okay? Don't cry, you child. Your father is just suffering from a skin injury and it's not a problem. On the other hand, have you eaten it?" Madam asked Suyu with heartache. They had just eaten it, and after eating something, everyone was in good spirits. "Eating it, don't worry, Mom. Later, Caixia will bring chicken soup to Grandpa and the others to eat." "Chicken soup?" Madam and Su Qiwen both exclaimed in surprise. "Where did you get the chicken soup?" "Yes, I did," Suyu said. "Sister, you." Su Qiwen stood up and pulled Suyu aside, sitting down in an unnoticed spot. The eldest lady didn't know how her son reacted so badly, so she had to watch her siblings leave. Su Qiwen then asked, "Sister, tell big brother, what exactly is going on? When I was bandaging with my grandfather before, he wanted to ask, is my younger sister like a different person? Can she inexplicably give people a headache? Can she still hunt now? What kind of girl is my younger sister?" He knows very well that no matter how she changes, she doesn't change overnight, right? She also became like a different person, except for her unchanged appearance, everything else was different from her previous sister's appearance. "Do you believe me, big brother?" Suyu understands that her changes will eventually be questioned. If the Su family does not trust her due to her changes and does not love her as much as before, then she will consider protecting the Su family. Su Qiwen frowned and said, "Big brother, why don't you trust your sister? Big brother is worried that something bad might happen to her." He once heard his classmate say a strange thing, which was that his friend's sister not only had a big change in temperament since she fell, but also learned something she never knew before. The family also made a fortune by relying on his sister's occasional ideas. But as a result, she was targeted by others, and in the end, the younger sister was forcefully taken in by a powerful person to become a concubine, not only squeezing out her sister's value, but also destroying her entire family. After the younger sister found out, she eventually committed suicide. Suyu saw that Su Qiwen was really worried about her, rather than questioning her, and she said, "Big brother, something has indeed happened to me. My spiritual power has suddenly become stronger, so strong that I can use it to attack people. Do you believe my sister, big brother?" After speaking, Suyu looked at Su Qiwen calmly, wanting to see his reaction. "Do you believe such a bizarre thing, big brother?" Choosing to tell Su Qiwen was something she had considered. After all, there must be some unexpected events happening in the future, there must be a source, there is no need to hide it. If it can be concealed for a while, it cannot be concealed for a lifetime. Compared to the original owner, it was simply their actions. But she also concealed the matter of spiritual space, and of course, no one would say anything about changing the core. Su Qiwen was first surprised, then relieved. He breathed a sigh of relief and said, "I see. Big brother believes in you, but in the future, it's better for you to hide this ability. Don't let anyone know. People with ulterior motives, such as emperors and princes who hold great power, will try their best to take their younger sister for their own use. Otherwise, what awaits their younger sister will be disaster." Afterwards, he also told Suyu about his classmate's sister. "So, does my sister understand what big brother means?" He wanted to rub Suyu's head, but was afraid that the handcuff on his hand would touch her, so he had to give up and let out a heavy sigh. Suyu nodded, not taking Su Qiwen's words to heart. There were probably no people in the world who could hurt her. It's not her arrogance, it's her confidence. Only someone like her can hurt her. Spiritual beings with supernatural abilities are rare in the afterlife, not to mention in the West Phoenix Kingdom where there are no supernatural beings. The emergence of supernatural beings is conditional. In the apocalypse, there is nothing left, but it is in order for humans to survive and unleash their potential that some supernatural beings are born. After the apocalypse, it remains a mystery whether such people have survived or not. Spiritual beings like her can all die, and Suyu believes that in the end, there will be no life. As for the girl mentioned by Su Qiwen, she either came back from rebirth or traveled through time. She showed herself without the ability to protect herself, and it can only be said that this ending is predetermined. She not only has the ability to use mental power to attack people, but also has a space where there is little hope of killing her. However, her words still had to reassure Su Qiwen. She said, "Don't worry, big brother. I will pay attention and not let myself fall into a desperate situation." End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Brother-Sister Friendship. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Brother-Sister Friendship. Well, then big brother can rest assured. Big brother knows that little sister has a sense of propriety in her actions, and he will also keep this secret for you. Big brother will explain it to parents. Su Qiwen did not ask Suyu why she suddenly developed this ability, as long as her younger sister is still younger and has not been swapped. After reading books for so many years, Su Qiwen is not someone who reads books of sages. He understands that there are many things in nature that are unknown to humans. It's also a good thing that my younger sister has this ability, at least she can protect her family. That's enough, and she should feel happy and lucky. Suyu smiled, this cheap guy is a bit reckless. It's not a secret to have abilities in the apocalypse and can be used openly. When the end of the world came, 30% of people awakened their abilities, and only this group of people did not become zombies. But this place cannot be compared to the end of the world. I don't understand what a power is here, and I estimate I will treat her as a demon to avoid unnecessary trouble. So, she should abide by the rules here. Okay, thank you, big brother. They trust her, she guards them. In the apocalypse, she was unable to hold on to her family, which became a regret. Here, she will definitely hold on to her family. Being so polite like Big Brother should have taken on the responsibility of protecting everyone. Su Qiwen smiled bitterly. He was a weak scholar with no means to bind himself, and everyone said that being useless was a scholar. Today, he truly realized it. When he reaches his destination, if he is still alive, he will definitely abandon literature and turn to martial arts. What's the use of being full of knowledge? He's not as skilled as his sister and can come back from fighting wild chickens. Big Brother, there's no need to blame himself. He needs to keep his spirits up. The journey of exile has just begun, and I don't believe the one above us would easily let us go. There must be many ghosts, monsters waiting for us. Su Yu patted Su Qiwen's shoulder. Well, my younger sister is sensible now. Don't worry, Big Brother is weak and has a strong heart. Su Yu smiled and said that the young master of a former aristocratic family had not lost his mentality in the face of great changes, and he was already doing very well. I glanced at Su Qiqing before, and he couldn't compare with his older brother. It was obvious that he had already collapsed and looked unattainable. Let's go over. Grandpa, father, and second uncle's injuries have been bandaged. Let's go and see Li Wang. For more only, Su Yu's heart was complex, perhaps influenced by the original owner, and she couldn't bear it anymore. If nothing unexpected happens, she will definitely marry him in the future. Of course, there was another reason. She hoped that Morongli could pick himself up and snatch the dragon chair from under the old emperor's buttocks. In this way, everyone will have a bright future. Although the wealth in her space can make the Su family spend decades, her identity is ultimately a demoted commoner. The demoted commoners cannot participate in the imperial examination and enter the official career, nor can they enlist in the military. They can only live an honest life in exile and cannot leave without being summoned. And those things can't be used openly yet. That is to say, she has a treasure without any place to use it. Then she needs to find a way to turn these into useful places. If Morongli really breaks down, then she doesn't mind helping Su Qiwen up. Su Qiwen, at a young age, has a good heart and mind, and is worth a fight. Isn't there a saying that goes, it's called, bo-e-bo, where bicycles become motorcycles? Su Qiwen glanced at Su Yu and swallowed his words, intending to ask his sister and Li Wang. Let's ask again in the future. It's too early to ask about those things now. The siblings walked out with their usual expressions, ready to say something to the lady. Coincidentally, Saixia brought chicken soup, which, although not stewed for too long, could still be enjoyed. Su Yue didn't say much after reading it, so she asked Grandma Zhang next to Madam to serve and feed her. Miss, that servant has sent it to second master, Saixia said as she put down the chicken soup. Okay, Grandpa, did you give it away? It was delivered, and the servant came from over there. Then you go quickly. Saixia nodded and carried the food box to Su Yuri's side. Perhaps the servants were afraid that the Su family would cause trouble when they got together, so they all settled down and rested separately. Dad, how are you feeling now? Su Yu's siblings sat next to Grandpa Su, and Su Yu asked. Hey, what else can we do? We've saved our lives, but it's just implicated your mother and son. Dad is really. Hey. Grandpa Su let out a deep sigh, feeling guilty as he looked at his wife and children. Dad, the imperial power is supreme. If you want me to die, I have to die. You also have no choice but to do so. Dad doesn't have to blame yourself, Su Qiwen quickly comforted. Grandpa Su looked at this sensible son and his talent was buried like this. But at this point, they can only accept their fate. As their son said, the imperial power is above them, and whatever they do is of no use. Well, Dad, how's your grandfather and uncle doing? Don't worry, Dad. If my sister's medicine is applied and bandaged, I will change my dressing regularly every day and there won't be any major problems. There are still some minor issues. There are no doctors, no medicine, and the weather is hot on the way to exile. That's good. Grandpa Su looked at Suyu with heartache in his eyes and said, you don't blame your father, do you? When the emperor gave her a marriage, said she didn't agree with anything, but he took it on. In fact, there is no room for them to refuse whether to accept or not. Not to accept is to resist orders. Once accepted, they boarded the same boat as King Li, sharing weal and woe. This day was predestined when the emperor was determined to deal with the Su mansion, but fortunately, the Su mansion has been acting in a low-key manner and has not done anything to make the emperor scratch his hair. Otherwise, today is not exile, but beheading. Suyu smiled and said, what's there to complain about? Aren't all of us okay? Yue is sensible now. Grandpa Su's eyes turned red as he held his pampered daughter in his palm, and her daughter grew up overnight. It's really unexpected to say such comforting words. You siblings, go and see Li Wang. He's not easy either. Grandpa Su said cautiously. We're getting ready to go, Suyu said. Ah. Grandpa Su and Madam are both surprised. Isn't it that my daughter has always despised Prince Li? This attitude change is somewhat surprising. Suyu leaned lightly against the eldest lady and frowned, saying, are your parents very surprised? The eldest lady also hugged her daughter, tenderly stroking her hair, and nodded at the same time as Uncle Su. If nothing unexpected happens, my daughter can only marry her in the future. Instead of disliking her, it's better to accept that she has been exiled. What else can't be accepted? This is her true thoughts. She has not overthrown the current rule for a day, and she cannot shake off the fact that she is Murong's divorced fiancé A.E. She is not the original owner, she doesn't have a shallow perspective and won't accept her fate, but if she wants to overthrow the current rule, she must have a suitable leader. Peasant uprisings are not so easy. The Su family is just a civil servant, with no soldiers under their command. But Murong is different. After all, he is also the son of the emperor. Is it rare for a son to overthrow Laozi in all dynasties? End of this chapter.